Welcome to the Digital Empires podcast. I'm Shruti Pankthi, a digital product entrepreneur and content creator. I went from being a hobby blogger to building a 7-figure business in just 4 years using the power of digital products and content marketing. And I'm here to help you do the same. So let's get started. Hey, welcome. In today's podcast episode, I'm going to walk you through some of the practices that I have found really helpful in not just changing the way that I think about money, but also the way I think about business, the way I think about life, and also have helped me almost 10x my income. So the first practice that I want to share with you, which again is like a tactical thing that anyone can do, is to create a vision board. And I'm someone who is not huge into creating paper things or even into journaling and writing stuff down. So what I prefer to do is to create a vision board on my iPhone. So I just go on Canva and I look for a vision board template, which has the option of at least 6 to 8 photos. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to then look for photos online which align with what it is that I want to achieve or what it is that I want to manifest. So one of the things that I use in my vision board is also a sales number or a revenue number. And I think that might be something interesting for you if you are someone like me who's really analytical and who loves to actually manifest certain things. Even though I don't have a timeline to these manifestations, I would write down something like month to date, net revenue, or I will write daily revenue. And that can be any goal that you feel is something that you're working towards. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that you want to create a goal which is in your head achievable, because if you create a goal which, gives you anxiety every time you look at it, then that's not really going to be effective for, building this vision board. So when it comes to specific numbers, what I have found to be really something that I can manifest quickly is numbers that are slightly ahead of where I am right now. And that kind of prepares me with, the hope that it's going to happen without adding extra pressure as to when it's going to happen or if it's going to happen or not, right? So for example, I have had a 200K month in the past, but I haven't had one recently. So I added 200K as one of my vision board goals, which is a monthly, let's say, sales goal. For you, this might be something different depending on where you are in your business. But if I was to add 500K instead of 200K, that would automatically make me feel a little bit uneasy, because deep down, I feel like I haven't done the work yet to actually be there already. And that would feel like it's something far away, which doesn't really create excitement. So your vision board has to be something that is things that you feel you're able to manifest in the next 3 to 6 months. And that's something that can be really, really exciting, because once you have manifested that, you can then change out the photos, swap out the stuff for new photos, and then manifest them as well. So pictures that I have include, pictures of holidays, pictures in a beach location, eating healthy and, having a nice apartment and, some other materialistic things that you may or may not have. This could even be something like you spending time with your dog or you spending time with your family, and you just want to add that as an image because it's something that you're actively manifesting. I found this technique to be really, really useful in manifesting things. And one of the things that I manifested doing this last year was having a team retreat, which ended with a party on a yacht. And that was something that I never thought would have been possible. But I had just put that picture like a year ago, and that came to fruition. Almost the exact same photo from, the exact same angle. It was just wild to me that this works. And the reason why I believe this works is that because you're subconsciously training your brain to see those images that you aspire to have in your life again and again and again. And your brain really doesn't know what is real and what is a desire or what is something that hasn't come to your physical world yet. So it's a great practice for you to put out 6 to 8 photos of what you aspire your life to look like, or what are things that you're working on. But keep in mind, don't put things which are, 10 years away. Try to put things which you want to achieve within this year so that your brain can really normalize the fact that it's coming to you. The second practice that is again something that anyone can do and that I love doing as well and has made a huge, huge difference in my life is actually listening to a money mindset meditation. Now, there are so many different gurus out there. You can really pick whatever aligns the most to you. For me personally, I have found Brian Scott. I just like his voice. He has a podcast named Reality Revolution Podcast, and he talks about a lot of different things. But one of the things that he talks about is the large sums of money meditation. I believe he even has a course on it, which I haven't done yet. But what I have done is I have a 10-minute money mindset meditation that I listen to pretty much on a weekly basis, if not more regularly. And I know that we can be really, really busy and find it difficult to have time for a long meditation, which is why I really like this meditation, because it's just 10 minutes of you taking out time to just listen to these words and affirming them to come to your reality over and over again. And one of the hacks that I want to share with you is that I am someone who actually does it most often while I'm in a bath or I'm taking a shower, because I feel like water combined with affirmations is just something magical for me. And I have noticed that when I meditate, when I'm taking a bath or I'm in the shower, I can really just focus on those words and just let them take over me instead of when I am separately meditating, which again, I also do from time to time. But those are meditations which are just without any affirmations or without any guidance. I would just sit and take out 5 minutes to just close my eyes and relax, especially if I'm feeling nervous or anxious or any of those things. So the reason why I feel like this works very, very well is because you kind of affirm these words, which again, one of the words that Brian Scott talks about is how he talks about the fact that large sums of money come to me from different sources of income and from different methods, and also that I get to keep, I get to invest, I get to save, and I get to, spend joyfully. So every word that he speaks out is just so perfectly curated. And I think this is the power of actually repeating those words to yourself, even if you don't say them loud, even if you just hear them again and again. This is one of the meditations that I truly believe has helped me so much in normalizing the fact that large sums of money come to me. And I've really seen a huge jump in my income after practicing this meditation on a consistent basis. Okay, practice number 3 that I believe has also been very, very important in helping me align myself to the type of person that I want to become. And I have another podcast episode that I created earlier, which is all about the mindset hacks that made me millions. You can go back and, check that as well, where I dive deeper into some of the hacks that I do. And this practice really is selective information. And I don't know if I actually started to do it consciously, or was it more something that just came to me during, the pandemic, because I was just so overwhelmed with the amount of fear-mongering and negative news that we had. And it just really exhausted me, especially because at the time I was really starting off my business. So I was already under pressure of figuring out how to start my business in Germany. I had things like, visa stuff going on, and I was really in an uncertain state of mind. So I really didn't want to add on more baggage to this feeling of, all the negativity that was around. Because as we all know, 2020 was just a shit show of a year. So what I did at that time, and I continue to do, is that I literally stopped listening or watching or reading any news at all. And I know this can come across as a huge shock, because a lot of people often ask me and they're like, but don't you miss out on, knowing about the world events and etc. And what I respond to that is that honestly, if something is super important and something is a topic that needs to be discussed, someone in my specter of, family or friends or network is going to bring that up. So if there is like a topic which needs to be discussed, it's probably going to be brought up amongst my friends and family. And so what I did is I actually tuned out all of the world news, just in the hope that it's going to really align me with thinking more positively and not worrying about things constantly. Another thing that I used to do, which I felt was a really bad habit, was my parents and my family live in India. So I would often go and look at news in India. And of course, I would look at a lot of negative news, and that would just send you down a spiral. And I realized that was not helpful at all, especially because I was far away from them. So I didn't want to spend my entire day in the energy of worrying and anxiety. And I think this has really helped me a lot in being selective with what I read. Now, what kind of news do I still read? And I would still continue to read from time to time. Again, I don't do this very often, but I would do news like business news or news in the world of online marketing, things that are related to my business. I would still stay informed on them because I have an interest in them. But I wouldn't do like geopolitical news very often, because I think that is just super, super negative of late and something that I just don't feel called to read on a regular basis. And when it comes to selective information, it's not just about, reducing or eliminating news from your daily habits, because I know it really is a habit. I know of a lot of friends of mine in Germany who actually the first thing they do in the morning is they read the world news, right? It's a habit. And for me, I am really glad that I've been able to remove that as a part of my daily routine. But another thing that I have been able to do when it comes to selective information is to practice the same thing on social media. So because my business runs on social media and because I am pretty actively present on social media, I have to be very, very aware of what content I'm consuming and what information I'm consuming, because it does impact my mood. So when it comes to my social media accounts, I have a business account for pretty much every website that we run. whether it's digitalempires.co, it's Digital PLR Hub, it's my own personal brand account. And in those accounts, I actually do not follow anyone. Reason being that I do not want any noise to get to me and to send me spiraling in, the whole comparison field or seeing, oh, she's doing that, so maybe I should do this. Like, I just don't want to be in business from a place of reaction or a place of doing something just because someone else is doing it or comparing myself to anyone else. And this is why in my business account, I literally stopped following anyone because I just didn't see the point of it. I didn't see the point of how that would make me more productive when I was posting content for my business. Whereas on my personal account, which is, the place where I connect with friends and family, etc., what I do there is that I look for people who inspire me. So people who are ahead of me. So any entrepreneur that I want to follow, whether it's Sarah Blakely or it's Cody Sanchez, entrepreneurs that inspire me, businesses that inspire me, brands that inspire me, I will follow them and just keep an eye on what they're doing. But because I'm in that mode and I'm consuming it for my private consumption, I don't automatically start comparing my business to them, which really helps me in staying sane and also being selective with the information that I actually use. Next up, when it comes to selective information, that also goes on to what you consume for your business. So first thing would be books. I think in year 3 of my business, which was actually 2022, I believe, that's probably the last year that I actually actively bought business books. And I would still buy a couple of books, maybe one book a quarter about business. But the majority of books I consume now are all about energy, mindset, healing, things that I feel that I cannot learn just by watching a YouTube video. Things that go a little bit deeper, things that make me understand, how I'm operating, where I'm going. And some of the books that I found to be really, really helpful was, I think for money mindset particularly, the book that I love the most is A Happy Pocket Full of Money. And it does start off a little bit heavy with quantum physics and all of that. But eventually it makes so much sense, guys. If there's just one book you can read about, money mindset, I would really recommend A Happy Pocket Full of Money. If you are into more of like neuroscience and also just understanding quantum physics, I also can recommend Joe Dispenza's book, Becoming Supernatural. I've also heard good things about Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, but I haven't yet read it, but maybe I will read it soon. And if you're someone who is a coach or someone who's really just a beginner in the online marketing space, you can look at Amanda Frances' book, Rich as Fuck. I found it to be more beginner friendly, but I think it's definitely a good place to start if you're just sort of dipping your feet in the world of books. Moving on to selective information that also goes on to courses and mentors. So at the moment, I do not consume a lot of courses because honestly speaking, there are very few people who I can look up in this space and say, oh, this person has a skill that I would love to aspire to. So I only take courses at the moment from people that are having a skill or practicing a skill in their business that I feel is necessary for me to learn from. And ideally, people who have bigger businesses than me, because I think it's easier for me to understand where I can be going to learn from someone who's already ahead of me instead of looking at people who are maybe not where I am going. So yeah, this is something that I definitely consciously practice when I look for a course. I also recently invested in a mastermind and it really blew my mind how much energetically I could change because of this investment. And I invested in a mastermind, which is for female entrepreneurs who are making 7 figures or more. As it is, we know that female entrepreneurs making 7 figures or more are a small minority all over the world. So being able to connect to women who are playing at this level, who have different mindsets, different habits, like that is just so precious. And I think that's why it's so important for us to surround ourselves with information, with people, with relationships that are taking us where we want to go and not holding us back. So in other words, when I talk about selective information, what I really do is that I curate my day-to-day to only feed me information or knowledge that serves me and that inspires me and not information that puts negativity in me or holds me back. Okay, next up, the next practice that I also do is selective communication. Now, I might be naming these, practices wrong because I've just made them up from scratch, but I will just shortly explain what I mean by selective communication. So by this, I really mean to focus on what I say and think and to quickly catch myself when I am going down a rabbit hole or I'm saying things that I would not want to say. Now, I learned this from following Catherine Zenkina's podcast, which is the Manifestation Babe podcast. Again, a great resource for you to get started with, especially as a beginner. I used to hear this podcast a lot last year, and it helped me a lot in reframing sentences that I would use. So one thing that I used to use a lot would be, something is expensive. And I would also use this in German, which is, a language that I also speak, or even in Hindi. And I tried to really change the way I would express this word. And some of the words that I now use would be pricey, I would use premium, I would use luxury, because in my head, that is a different switch from something that is expensive. Because when I say something is expensive, I'm automatically telling myself this is out of my reach and this is not in my normal life. And that's something that I don't want to tell my brain, because I want to tell my brain that everything is possible. Anything is possible. Everything is within my reach. It might not just be, something that I can get right now, but eventually down the line, I'm sure I can get it. And so, did you see how I phrase these words? I phrase them in a way that allows me to believe in the possibility that I am operating from a place that I can grow and have more income, right? Another way that we sabotage ourselves a lot is by saying that we can't afford something. And again, this is placing a limitation on you and placing a limitation on your energy and telling your brain, hey, sorry, but this is out of my reach. This is not in my budget. This is something that I can't do. And what I have decided to reframe this thought or this communication as is it's not a priority for me right now. So if I say I can't do something, I try as much as possible not to say it. And when I say it, I would rephrase this to saying, hey, it's not a priority for me right now, or I feel like I am not able to commit to this right now. And that is coming from a place of understanding that, yes, this is possible for me, but at the moment, I am not making this a priority. And that again tells my brain, if I'm thinking, wow, I like this bag, but the old me would have said, but Shruti, we can't afford this, right? But now what I'm saying is, hey, right now it's not a priority for me because maybe I want to invest in something else, or maybe I want to save my money for something else, right? Or maybe this is feeling out of alignment right now for me. So there are really so many different ways that you can change the way you communicate, even within yourself. And I would argue that changing the way you communicate with yourself is actually at the core of learning this habit, which is really being thoughtful with the words that you speak and being thoughtful with the actions that you take as well. Another way that to look at it would be, when we say, if this is going to happen for me. So instead of saying, if this is going to happen for me, if I meet this goal, if I meet this target, if I get this bag, how about we change that to saying, when I get it, right? Like when I get this laptop, when I get this bag, when I get to a point where I'm making $1 million in my business. Because that tells your brain it's not a matter of whether or not it will happen to you, it's a matter of when. And that again normalizes the fact that you are on the right track, that you are going in the right place, and that you are doing the right things that you need to do in order to grow. Okay, moving on, we have step number 5, which is, again, something that is kind of tricky to understand, and that took me quite a while to understand as well, and that is practicing neutrality. And the reason why I believe this is something very, very important, and you can see a lot of videos online about it as well, and it's also something I've noticed myself, is when I detach myself from an outcome and I say, I don't really care about it anymore, that exact same minute or the next week after that is when it comes in. Whether it is a letter that you're expecting from, an office, or it is, an appointment or something like that. I've noticed it to happen so many times that I've really believed that this is something that is so, so true. And what I mean by neutrality is in a couple of different things. So first, let's talk about neutrality in your reaction. And for me, this means that like I said earlier, I consume a lot of social media content. Obviously, I create a lot of social media content because I am a creator. And that means that I'm often shown things that can potentially trigger me, especially when it comes to things like money, things like wealth, things like growing, things like lifestyle freedom, etc. So if I now see someone that, let's say had $500,000 launch, right? That is something that I have not had yet. But instead of saying, oh my God, that's not possible for me, or oh my God, how dare she, or oh my God, how did she do that? I try to change that to saying, oh wow, that is so cool that it's possible. And when you change the way you react to these things, even if it is something like seeing, let's say, a Porsche and it's just going by, one way to react to it would be, ooh, that must be a rich person, or oh my God, they have so much money to spare. And that is putting you again in a position of, I will never be able to have that, or this intense emotion, which is a negative emotion towards having something which is just a material thing. Instead of that, how about we say, oh, wow, that's cool. What do they do for a living? Or how did they make their money? Having this inquisitive reaction instead of a negative response or having a bitter response has really been key in for me to understand that this is the way that you reframe the way you've thought about money. Because no matter whether you come from wealth or you come from a poor upbringing or you come from, let's say, a middle class background, there's so many beliefs that were instilled to us in childhood, also when we were working in a 9 to 5, There's so many traumas that we all collectively share, but we have to start working on them actively in order to actually change that. And one of the things to do it is to actually normalize the fact that someone else is doing better than you and go to, react to them in a place of admiration and a place of wonder and curiosity instead of saying, how dare they do it? Or something must be wrong. Or, oh my God, she must have a rich dad, or I don't know, a rich husband or whatever. Like, let's stop doing that, because that makes just more space for lack in our life. And that just doesn't help us, when we are manifesting more wealth and, up leveling our life. Another thing that I've noticed is also neutrality in relationships. So when someone is commenting on you, you also need to respond back with the same neutrality instead of participating in negative conversation, right? So learning where to draw a boundary and saying, I don't think that's true, is also really important, because sometimes when we interact with people who maybe are on a different, let's say, path, they might say things which maybe trigger us or which are not ideal for us to kind of take on where we are going. So for example, if someone tells you, oh, that bag is so expensive, right? Your reaction can be like, yeah, I saved for 600 years to have it, or something like that, which would be the typical reaction that would make the other person like you more. But you could also say, yeah, I worked hard for it and I think I deserve it. And that's it. You close down this conversation of that being out of reach or that being something impossible for you. So it's also important for us to not just practice neutrality in our reactions when we are online or when we are seeing stuff or in our head, but also in our day-to-day relationships, where we are making sure that the way we respond to things is also changing. Because at the end of the day, you are what you think, and your actions need to respond to that as well, right? So if your actions are completely the opposite of what you think, then something's not adding up, right? Your brain's confused. And it's also like when someone compliments you on your dress and says, oh, you look nice, instead of immediately going and say, oh, I bought it for $5, or oh, it was a discounted thing. Let's stop doing that. Let's just accept the compliment and try to stay neutral and say, yeah, thank you. I think it looks great on me, or I really like this color, or I feel like it's really summery. Like, let's try to practice that from a place of being neutral instead of a place of being defensive or taking offense to someone else or being reactive. And I think these are things that need time, but with time, you can really practice them and perfect them to really get yourself energetically to the place where you're meant to be. Okay, and moving on, when we talk about neutrality, there's one thing that you absolutely have to keep in mind and is super duper important, and that is neutrality in your business. Now, what does it mean to be neutral in your business? It means not having your mood depend on how many sales you had or how much money you made this week. And I know this can be so incredibly hard, because as female entrepreneurs, our business are like sometimes our first babies if we don't have other babies, or sometimes an additional baby as well, which means we are very emotionally connected to it. We rely so much on our net worth and our self-worth based on how our business is doing. And it's really important to understand that your business is just a small part of your life. That is not the entire personality of you. That is not everything that you are. Your self-worth doesn't just come from how much money you make. It also comes from who you are as a person. And I think that is something that I've learned the hard way to practice, because I realized that when I was very emotional about how many sales I was making, I was just continuing to get worse and worse, and every other day would get worse and worse, versus when I tried to regulate my emotions and tried to be, again, practicing neutrality and being neutral, whether it was a great sales day or it was a bad sales day. So, my business makes anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000 a day. That doesn't mean that I should extremely change my reaction based on what I'm making. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay attention to your business and you should just be delusional and not take any action if your business is crashing. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, let's not try to react in a negative way when we see that the numbers are not where they need to be. So for example, if I have, let's say, a 3K day, right, that is below my average or below my normal, I'm not going to go and start crying and totally ruin the whole day for me and everyone around me, because I have done that and it hasn't been productive. It is not something that actually helped me. What helped me instead was saying, hey, okay, so, we made a little bit of less money today, but I'm sure it's going to come back to normal very soon. Is there anything that I feel that I could improve on or slightly change in order to get back on track, right? That is coming from a place of love. That is coming from a place of being kind to yourself and not being like, oh my God, I'm a total loser. I'm going to lose this and I'm never going to be able to feed my family again. Once you start to think of those thoughts, you just start spiraling. There is no end to those thoughts. So you have to catch yourself very quick when you start to feel emotional and really focus on doing things that bring you back to a neutral state. And you say, hey, you know what? It's just a low sales day for me, but actually my average is much higher. And I'm sure it's going to come back by the end of this week, by the end of this month, by the end of this year, whatever makes most sense for you. In other words, try to at the same level of excitement, whether your business is doing very good or it is doing not so good, because that tells your brain that it's okay for us to have ups and downs. It's okay for a business to be to business. No business operates at the exact same level for 10 years. That's just not possible. That has never happened in the history of time, right? There are going to be ups and downs. There's going to be seasonality in your business. There are going to be times in your life when you don't feel like showing up and, you're going to have more sales or less sales depending on how much you show up. I mean, there are weeks when I totally disappear from social media because I'm burnt out and I just need a break. That could happen to you as well. But if I started to use those moments as a way for me to tell myself that I'm not enough or my business is not enough, again, I'm instilling, this lack mindset that there's not enough for me to hold on to. And I'm just grabbing desperately to whatever comes. We want to be working towards a place of there is more than enough in this world for my business to thrive. There is more than enough people who want my products. There is more than enough people who are going to buy from me. There is more than enough people who I am going to serve or who I'm going to help. And these are the things that you have to practice in your business, which is, again, what I say, being neutral instead of being, emotionally attached to outcomes. Of course, you can still work on goals. Like I said in practice number 1, it's still okay to have a monetary goal. It's still okay to have, a goal of how many followers you want or whatever it is that moves the needle in your business. But what's not okay is putting yourself down and basically just telling yourself that you don't deserve it or that you're not good enough and putting yourself in a place which is not neutral. Because the minute you get emotional about it is the minute when you start to tell yourself that things are not going to go the way that you want to go, right? So still focus on reflection when you have the days where, you feel like you're not at your best, and find ways to improve and change and tweak and be in the energy of experimentation, but don't be in the energy of lack and in the energy of desperation and in the energy of sadness because one day or 2 days your business is not doing that well. So I hope that this lesson was useful for you. Let me know your thoughts by sharing them with me on Instagram. You can find me at Shruti Pankte, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to give us a follow. And if you would like to learn more about how I'm building a profitable digital product business, I have a 100% free training that you can get started with. It's just 25 minutes of the step-by-step roadmap of how I went from zero to over $1 million with digital products. If you want to check that out, the link is going to be in the description box or in the show notes. Thank you so much.